Ruby Tuesday Weld, Illuminati High Priestess. Part 1. Tuesday Weld, an intro to her monarch mind control. Part 2. Lord Love a Duck. Part 3. Tree codes and alchemical correspondences of Ruby Tuesday. Part 1. Tuesday Weld, an intro to her monarch mind control. Was relatively unknown actress and model Tuesday Weld a 60s sex kitten charmer and destroyer of men's morals, leading them to rack and ruin? Or rather, a hyper-intelligent, well-connected, monarch-programmed, druidic princess? In these instances, both cases are true. Her pedigree and birth preordained her for an occult underground role that she still eschews to this day. She was a casualty of her birth and bloodline. Unlike the other three maiden, mother, and crone sacrifices, Marilyn Monroe as the maiden, Sharon Tate as the mother, and Jane Mansfield as the crone of the 1960s, Tuesday Weld had an exalted place in the Illuminati hierarchy. Perhaps others around her were sacrificed in her name, but she was not to be. Her life follows a series of interesting patterns and coincidences that align with others' important research. Most importantly is Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler's The Illuminati Formula to create an undetectable total mind control slave. I will be using quite a bit of Springmeier's book to tie into another important work of research, which gave me most of my information. A man by the name of Charles Teague did a well-researched PDF entitled Tuesday Weld, Lord Love a Duck, The Initiation, Orientation, and Presentation of an Illuminati High Priestess. Mr. Teague has made some very convincing arguments showing that Weld was the victim of monarch mind control programming from a very young age, and correlates this to Springmeier's as well as Dave McGowan's work. I can't stress enough how Teague and Springmeier have carried the brunt of this research, and I am only assimilating their understandings together and adding a touch of my own. I will also be adding at the end of the presentation alchemical correspondences to the name Ruby Tuesday. This will be an expose of some very unknown occult practices and beliefs, as well as the role that Tuesday has played in the Crowleyan Aeon of Horus. For Crowley believed that you could not truly usher in the new age until you had destroyed all the remnants of the old. And as an insatiably sexual and hiddenly esoteric figure as Tuesday was, she could not be the more perfect candidate for such a role. Who was this fascinating woman that you probably have never heard of? The Weld family is a very aristocratic and well-known in all of Western history. Tuesday's relation, Thomas Weld, was a personal friend of King George III. The Weld clan held a castle in UK and were selected by Freemason George Washington to serve in the Revolutionary War. The Welds also operated a private maritime fleet of clipper ships that went to China and Japan and brought back fine cargoes. Tuesday's cousin, William Weld, was the former governor of Massachusetts and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. The Welds also had a close working relationship with the Bush family, and we are all well aware of how the Bush family is connected to Aleister Crowley. Tuesday's mother was a Kerr and Balfour, and a direct relation to Alexander Graham Bell. William Balfour Kerr was of the Scottish Balfour clan and was a founding member of Cecil Rhodes' Round Tables. The Balfours were also instrumental in the Balfour Declaration of 1917, whereas declared that Israel must be the new homeland for the Jews in diaspora. When Tuesday was born, it was said that a Scottish nurse in the hospital claimed that she had done a horoscope on her and that Tuesday would become a very famous person. Susan Kerr Weld was born on August 27, 1943. Her father died when she was 3 years old, which I'll touch upon again. Her mother was the well-connected Josine Balfour Kerr, the daughter of artist and life illustrator William Balfour Kerr. I explored the Life magazine connection to the occult and secret societies in my Black Dahlia podcast. It is clear that Weld holds ties. Oh, and also my Kenneth Anger podcast. Life magazine was in the Kenneth Anger podcast as well as the Black Dahlia, which were also tied together through certain players. And Kenneth Anger is tied to Tuesday Weld as well. They were friends, very close friends. Kenneth Anger died about 2 weeks or less after I did my podcast about him. You cannot make that shit up. Okay. It is clear that Weld holds ties to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry through her mother's side. She legally changed her name from Susan Kerr Weld to Tuesday Weld on October 9th, 1959, supposedly the same year she assumed the role of High Priestess. Wikipedia claims that her nickname Tuesday came from her cousin's inability to be able to pronounce Susan, and she said tutu. Although, when I go into my section on correspondences, it will become clear that this is most likely a fake story meant to cover up the true meaning of the name Tuesday in alchemy and mysticism. Tuesday's modeling career began at age 3, and at age 12 she made her acting debut in the feature film The Wrong Man by Alfred Hitchcock. In 1956, she played the lead in Rock, 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 which became her nickname and perhaps one of her most prominent alter archetypes. During the late 1950s to early 1960s, she starred in several TV shows and feature films, including Backwoods, Cinderella, and I put in parentheses, Underground/Backdoor Girl, ? Rally Around the Flag Boys, The Five Pennies, and Danny Kaye was her co-star and said she was 15 going on 27. So 15 is the age she became the High Priestess. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, 77 Sunset Strip, The Many Loves of Dobie Gills, Because They're Young, Sex Kittens Go to College, The Private Lives of Adam and Eve. In 1961's Return to Peyton Place, she played an incest survivor. In 1962, she had an affair with her co-star Elvis on the set of Wild in the Country. And in 1961, she did the TV version of Bus Stop, which originally starred Marilyn Monroe. I will discuss Marilyn's connection to Weld later in the podcast. In 1962, she starred with British comedian Terry Thomas in the film Bachelor Flat. Thomas said that Weld was the most frightening person he had ever met, and the title still holds. It was said that at the time, her mother did not like her having affairs with older men, and so she left her house at age 16. She was Stanley Kubrick's first choice to play Lolita, but she turned the role down. She said, "I didn't have to play it. I was Lolita." Sue Lyons, who ended up playing Lolita in 1962, ended up being sexually abused and going crazy from her time in Hollywood. Weld continued her prolific presence in TV in the early 1960s, including a special with Bob Hope, who was a notorious MK Ultra handler of Kathy O'Brien. In 1965, she had her most famous role in The Cincinnati Kid with Steve McQueen. Much like Kenneth Anger and other exalted members of the higher occult, Weld oftentimes displayed erratic behavior in public. She refused to meet a local governor at a fundraiser for hurricane victims and jumped out of a moving car. In 1966, the year of the Paul McCartney ritual sacrifice, Weld starred in a very strange film called Lord Love a Duck, which is a hidden homage to her role as High Priestess and a nod to the death of the innocents of the 1950s and traditional values. I will go into much more detail about Lord Love a Duck later. In the late 1960s, she starred in The Crucible, Cimarron Strip, and Pretty Poison. At the time, she turned down films that were box office successes, such as Bonnie and Clyde, Rosemary's Baby, True Grit, Cactus Flower, Bob and Carol, and Ted and Alice. She had chosen to reject these roles because she believed, or rather knew behind the scenes, they would become commercially successful. Tuesday always flew below the radar and afforded the more well-known roles to others. There is a strange connection between Weld and Roman Polanski's murdered wife Sharon Tate, as well as the Manson family in the film Lord Love a Duck, that qualifies as early predictive programming. She has been in periodic and minor roles since 1970s, and the most notable 1977's Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which depicts scenes of an orgy, divorce, 2 abortions, and alcoholism. She was married 3 times. The first was to Claude Hartz, bisexual screenwriter, from 1965 to 1971. The second was famed actor, musician, and comedian Dudley Moore, and he starred in Arthur with Liza Minnelli, if you guys know that movie. He was pretty well known in that time frame. From 1975 to 1980. And the last was Pinchas Zuckerman, Israeli concert violinist, from 1985 to 1998. What is of most import from this section about Weld on Wikipedia is Zuckerman's very cryptic but ultimately damning quote, "I can't stand the backstage scene. I don't want to hear another note." The backstage scene Zuckerman is referring to is Weld's pivotal role as the Druidic High Priestess. Between marriages, she dated Al Pacino, Baryshnikov, Omar Sharif, Richard Gere, and Ryan O'Neal. Ryan O'Neal was a man known to have sexually abused his own child. She sold her beach house in Montauk, New York, which has associations with MK Ultra, the Montauk Monster, and Stranger Things, which is about MK Ultra and people with special abilities that are controlled by the government. Okay. Connected to a murder-suicide in the early... Okay, so the house she lived in was connected to a murder-suicide in the early 2000s, and then she moved to Carbondale, Colorado, which is where, like, all my friends from college were from, which is kind of weird. Not far from the road from another creep, Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson was just up the road in, I think it's called Woody Creek by Aspen. She stayed in Colorado until 2018, whereas she moved to a home in the Hollywood Hills. So who truly was this woman, and what was she all about? Other than one person I know, no one else had ever heard of her before I brought her name up. I had never heard of her until I listened to a podcast by the Cosmic Peach about her. One of the most fascinating theories maintained by Jeffrey Turner is that the plane crash that killed Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper in 1959 was a calling card for Tuesday's ritualistic initiation into her ascension as High Priestess of the Illuminati. This was when she was 15 years old, and correlates to analogies of ritualistic programming contained in a poem she wrote referencing trees, which I will explain during the Monarch Mind Control part of the podcast. According to Turner, the plane had been sabotaged by backers of Weld as part of this rite. Her family was somehow tied to the airline, and the 3, which I put 3 in parentheses in all of this script because 3 is very important in Tuesday Weld's story in particular. Everything comes in 3s. All the sacrifices, all of the important incantations and programming cues, which I will... You guys, this is the darkest one I've ever done. It's so dark. And I had to dredge up some crazy stuff. And it's definitely going to be X-tagged. No doubt about that. So, okay. Continuing onwards. According to Turner, the plane had been sabotaged by backers of Weld as part of this rite. Her family was somehow tied to the airline, and the 3 deaths of the leaders of the innocent rock and roll, Milkshake Cafe, and Poodle Skirt era gave way to the new aeon of impulsive and reckless sexual freedom, drug use, and do what thou wilt state of life. Tuesday was the poster child for this new aeon, and a total accomplice into ushering all of those ideals. What is the craziest coincidence to this theory is at that time, Tuesday was dating songwriter and musician Don McLean. Don McLean wrote American Pie. Don McLean wrote American Pie, The Day the Music Died, an almost poem-like song written about the very same tragic plane crash that signaled Tuesday's ascent to secret society queendom. From the blog, They Shoot Actors, Don't They? During her childhood, Weld exhibited amazing clairvoyant gifts that quickly brought her to the attention of a concealed network of families, which Turner claims form the current Illuminati leadership. In this arena of behind-the-scenes world politics and ritual magic, Weld became a fast-rising prodigy in the Illuminati. Even Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satanism, dedicated his satanic Bible in part to Tuesday because, quote, she was the embodiment of the goddess and part of the ritual, end quote. How did she get where she is today? End quote. Charles Teague has really done a remarkable job of laying out many statements that Tuesday and others have made and showing the strange inconsistencies and weirdnesses associated with them. The next section is going to detail his work, supplemented by Springmeier's work where appropriate. This is the first quote that Teague offers to make his arguments. And this is Tuesday. My father's family came from Tuxedo Park, and they offered to take us kids and pay for our education on the condition that Mama never sees us again. Mama was an orphan who had come here from London, but so far as my father's family was concerned, she was strictly from the gutter. I have to give Mama credit. She refused to give us up. So I became the supporter of the family, and I had to take my father's place in many, many ways. So I became the supporter of the family, and I had to take... Okay, I said that, sorry. Sorry, guys, I'm tired. I was expected to make up for everything that had ever gone wrong in Mama's life. She became obsessed with me, pouring out her pent-up love, her alleged love on me. And it's become heavy on my shoulder ever since. To this day, Mama thinks I owe everything to her. Tuesday Weld. From Teague. There is so much wrong with this statement, I don't know where to begin, but here goes. My first question is, why would his parents offer to take the kids and cut her mom off completely? Contrary to Miss Weld's statement, her mother was not a true orphan, but was more or less abandoned by her relatives after her mother died. She lived a hard life in and out of foster homes and orphanages. She probably was a victim of mind control abuse also, since it is, and I put this in emphasis, generational in families. Her father lived in New York and was a famous artist, and many of his paintings were featured in Life magazine and many art books. Her mother was hardly from the gutter. Tuesday's father's family was very well off, but he was the black sheep, because he chose a life of adventure instead of family ambition. Even if he was a bit of a rebel, that would not be a good enough reason to cut off his wife from his family, and to bribe his widow to give up her kids. And what kind of mother would put a 3-year-old child to work to support the family? What was really going on here? Again, Miss Weld gives us a clue. On beginning her career at age 3, quote, Mama tried to turn my brothers and sisters into models too, but they preferred swimming. But me, I was a backward child, and I took to modeling immediately. Anything to escape. Quote, end quote, end quote. It is at this point that Teague says that Weld was obviously a victim of monarch mind control programming. Quote, restructuring is building a new system within the mind of an individual that changes their behavior to fit a pattern. Not everyone is suited for this type of programming, but trauma-based mind control is wholly different, which includes trauma, instilling fear, hypnosis, and drugs. You have to be intelligent, imaginative, and have the ability to disassociate your mind from external reality. She was an excellent recruit at an early age. End quote. The abuse from her mother caused her to disassociate, making it easier for her to be malleable to the manipulation and control of the handlers. This is why she displayed a love-hate relationship with her mother, who she claims saved her, but also claims who she was trying to escape from. At age 9, Weld suffered a nervous breakdown. At age 12, she suffered her first suicide attempt under the influence of alcohol. At birth, according to Springmeier, the grandmother, and grand is with an E at the end, grandmother, inspects the Illuminati's children for, quote, fitness, and the formal acceptance ceremony for the Grand Druid Council is at age 3. It is interesting to note that the numerical sequence for the important events in Tuesday's life follows multiples of 3. For example, 3, 9, 12, and 15. The time in her life between 9 and 15 is really strange. Miss Weld said, I was in and out of several schools, but I never really went. There were no rules in New York protecting working children. I was doing TV shows as well as modeling, and instead of going to school, I used to do what they called correspondence, which meant that if I was working, I'd just write it in and say I had jobs. Even when I didn't have jobs, I'd get up in the morning and say, goodbye, I'm going to school. And then I'd head for the village, and she means like the Greenwich Village in New York, and get drunk. Sometimes, and she spent a lot of time in Greenwich Village with gay guys, which I'm going to talk about. Sometimes I drink at bars, sometimes at parties, and sometimes I just stay home and drink. End quote. Teague surmises that a lot of these trips were probably to programming centers for mind control, and her mother knew exactly where she was going. This is very similar to the life stories of many of the child stars and musicians to come out of Disney and Nickelodeon who were sexually abused and put under MK, such as Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes, and others. The next telling quote. Oh, and Mackenzie Phillips, John Phillips' daughter, who had a sexual relationship with her own father until he died. And she wrote about it in her book, High on Arrival, which, you know, it's similar to Tuesday, where it's, like, just crazy shit, and, like, her just, like, basically admitting she didn't even know that she was doing what she was doing because she was under some kind of spell. Okay. The next telling quote. Quote, I made my first suicide attempt when I was 12. I had fallen in love with a homosexual, and when it didn't work out, I felt hurt. End quote. Miss Weld. Quote, a bottle of aspirin, a bottle of sleeping pills, and a bottle of gin. I was sure that would do the trick, but my mother came in and found me. I was in a coma for a long time and lost my hearing, my vision, and several other things. When I recovered, I decided that I should try to get some help. But my mother didn't think I needed analysis. She thought it might look funny. After all, there was nothing wrong with her little girl. I ask you, who's the crazy one? End quote. It's at this point that Teague states, quote, good Lord, why was she hanging out with a homosexual man at age 12? End quote. There are many reasons for this, he says, including that she felt safe around homosexual men because they would not sexually abuse her, and also that Roddy McDowell was her twinned. Like, okay, this is a term in MK Ultra, what Fritz Springmeier talks about. So twinned is in capital letters, which is a term meaning soul partners going under the same programming and situations under MK. This reminds me a lot of Judy Garland / Mickey Rooney, Fred Astaire / Ginger Rogers, and other such pairings. Also, the section about her mother not really caring about her health or well-being says everything you need to know about how these creatures treat their offspring. Mind control programming is based on fear and trauma. Instill maximum fear and inflict maximum trauma to the victim. Sometimes it will cause the victim to go into a coma, and they will suffer lost hearing, vision, and coordination. Sometimes they will experience seizures days later, and Miss Weld had seizures that were witnessed by her mother years later. They can become paralyzed and non-responsive. It is a horrendous torture to endure that kind of programming that is hinted at here. Children are subjected to isolation by being placed into freezers, closets, dark rooms, boxes, and isolation tanks. Sensory deprivation is a serious trauma that can cause people to hallucinate. The brain can go into an altered state just from sensory deprivation alone. Children develop fear of enclosed places, fear of water, fear of closed doors and rooms. Tuesday remarked on this several times. On needing to keep the refrigerator door open. I like everything open, everything. I don't like shut doors. I like to see. In the kitchen, I like to see all the spices, all the food. I wasn't really aware of it until people complained. It was completely unconscious. Ooh. Woo-wee. I would hear, "Could you please shut the door? We're going to lose all the ice." And if I couldn't see it, "It doesn't exist. Maybe it's existential." Children undergoing mind control programming are also starved and not given water while they are in isolation, so they might develop an unhealthy relationship with food. Miss Weld had a problem keeping off her weight during her career, going on eating binges and then dieting to take off the weight. Of course, her mother did not want her to go to analysis because it might reveal some of the programming she was being given. When she was married to Dudley Moore, the most irritating thing to him was her habit of leaving doors open. She would leave cupboards and doors open all the time. So, I hope you guys are getting a sense of these people and what they go through as children. And it's generational, and it just keeps perpetuating itself to control the human race through their sick, weird games. So, yeah, it's pretty nuts. I don't know if you guys have ever read Fritz Springmeier. I read him when I was living in Thailand the first time. I downloaded his PDF, and it just blew my mind how, like, intense the stuff they go through is. So, it's gonna get more dark. Don't worry. Hold on to your hats. It's very dark. Okay. Like, I think I'm gonna have to do a cartoon after this because I can't. This one was the darkest one I think I've ever done. Okay. Victims of Monarch are groomed to sever ties and have no friends. Tuesday often alluded to being totally friendless and alone. From Springmeier's book, Isolation from the World, so that the only reality is the leader's reality. The Illuminati isolates the slave, so new ideas are available or allowed only except, that doesn't make sense. The Illuminati isolates the slave so only new ideas are available or allowed except their cult leader's ideas. Whatever the Papa Bear Master says is the reality. And I'm going to show that in the show Homeschool. It's a Thai show, but it shows MK Ultra type programming of these kids that are unwanted and unloved, and their parents are actually very cruel, and so they're ripe for the picking for this type of abuse. And I'm going to show that in this podcast because it's very, like, visual of kind of the same stuff Tuesday probably went through. Each altar will only communicate with a few other altars. What this does is divide the person from their own parts. The will and mind is so broken that there is no organized resistance, nor any access to other altars who might know something. The slave will often be denied mother, grandmother, grandfather, aunts, sisters, children, grandchildren, and friends. They will be deprived of all naturally occurring relationships via mind control. This doesn't mean they exist in a vacuum. It means that the handlers will prevent natural relationships to develop. Isolation is very key, and parts are made to feel like animals rather than people to isolate them from humanity. No ideas are allowed the slave to confront their programmer's lies. They are programmed to hate Christ and the God of the Bible, so that they are isolated from the true God and his abundant spiritual resources. Children are programmed also to reject gifts, as gifts always come with a sacrifice. Tuesday was known not to accept gifts gracefully. There was an incident when she was modeling and they accidentally cut her leg with a razor trying to cut her skirt. She didn't tell them she was in pain or cry out at all. Teague said what she was probably remembering was a cutting torture where you had to suppress the urge to cry out. No cry programming. Oddly enough, Tuesday's nickname when she was modeling was The Rock, because she was stoic, would withdraw into a shell, not smile, and stay stone-faced. The MK Kids rules are no friends, no relatives, and no talking. Tuesday could not read well, but she had a phenomenal memory. One of her altars could have perhaps been level Pearl, which is the filing cabinet capacity for MK slaves. She memorized everything before she learned to read proficiently. Indicative of several MK kids like Britney Spears and others, she was smoking cigs and drinking at age 10, which was great for the handlers because it instilled a further sense of dependency. And I don't know what age it was when Britney was, like, you know, engaging and stuff, but it just seems like all those child stars, you know, fall into the same stuff. Another calling card signaling her hidden yet defiant role was the fact that she spent the shortest amount of time ever at Hollywood High, less than a week. And on the second day, she came to school dressed in all black, just like a witch. Victims of MK have no conscious memory of their intensive programming and display multiple personality alters that perform a variety of functions and activities, and are oftentimes compartmentalized from one another. Yet, through a victim's life, the subconscious knowing pops up in language and behavior. For instance, in a November 11th, 1977, and I noticed that was because November used to be 9/11 plus 77. 77 is the magician's number. She appeared in a witch's dress and hat at the Chateau Marmont Hotel, located on Sunset Boulevard. Like the Hotel Cecil, the Chateau Marmont has a dark and occulted history and apparently inspired the song Hotel California, Weld's previous residence. She lived there. Many of the most famous artists from that era have referred to or been influenced by Weld. Here are a few songs from the Beatles: Lady Madonna, I Am the Walrus, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, The Rolling Stones, Ruby Tuesday, Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, Moody Blues, Tuesday Afternoon, Steely Dan, Don Fagen, New Frontier, The Beach Boys, Barbara Ann, which is her character in Lord Love a Duck, Tuesday's Name in Lord Love a Duck, sorry, Walter Egan, Tuesday Weld, Tiny Tim, If Tuesday Weld Would Only Be My Wife, and many others. A recurring theme in Tuesday Weld and Liza Minnelli's life, which I kind of noted, very similar, is her attraction to gay or bisexual men, because they did not pressure her sexually. She had a few affairs with actors, including John Ireland, Elvis, and Gary Lockwood. She said that she vowed to marry by age 23. 23 is an occult number. And married Cloud Hartz, a lover to her best friend, Roddy McDowell. They had a daughter, Natasha, and Cloud was a devoted father. But T claims that ultimately this marriage was another aspect of MK control, in which Roddy played Tuesday's twin and handler. In the wedding photo, Tuesday and Claude are not smiling, but Roddy has a sly grin on his face and he is wearing Claude's glasses. Is this an Easter egg that he owns them both? According to Springwire, twinning and bonding is the process whereas two sisters of light, the level before mothers of darkness, will be placed before a many-faced mirror. And mirror and lights are very integral in this MK stuff. I'm going to talk about that in more detail. To be placed before a many-faced mirror with intense lights and programmed to see each other as inseparable. They become twins, and they are programmed to die if the other one dies. They are taught to be one in mind, body, and soul. They are bonded in many ways, including torturing each other and sexual bonding. The trauma bonding that they undergo will consist of A. Being put in life or death situations together. B. Given programming scripts which intertwine and fill in to complete each other to make a whole. So that's like he was in a relationship with her husband and he was literally giving it away in the wedding photo. So that would justify that programming code. C. Are placed in jobs that require total compliance with the programming in order to survive. And D. Are bonded together to other people. The scripture, a house divided against itself cannot stand, is used to program people to stay in line with what the team is doing. Something of great import that Teague found in his research was a poem that Tuesday wrote about every year of her life until age 22, and gives some very creepy cues that she was under MK. I will read the poem here. Tuesday Weld, number 1, so year 1, like, how would I know? 2, carried on a lot. 3, soda and shoes. 4, works a bore. So she's already working at age 4 and 3. As an MK slave, also as a model. 5, but I'm adored. So she's garnering attention in the higher echelon already at age 5. 6, but I can't read. 7, still can't or even smile. Well, I wonder why she can't smile. 8, I think I should go away for a while. 9, I retired. At age 9, she's saying I retired. How much crazy brutality has she gone through by age 9 to be able to say I have retired? Or at least I want to mentally retire is what she's trying to say. I retired, quit for once and all. 10, I've had my share. Again, it's just alluding to the fact that someone, 10, I think about myself at 10 and 8 and 7. I would definitely not be, like, reflecting my life and saying stuff like that. That's fucking weird. Okay. 11, when quitting fair. 12, tore my mother's hair. Which is, like, this reoccurring theme that she hates her mom. 13, well, I really didn't care. 14, grown and free, hated everyone. 15, emphasize bold, I saw a tree. 16, tried to kill my mother. 17, fell in love one and all. 18, thought I'd leave him for another. 19, I did. 20, had a birthday. 21, now I know real love for once and all. 22 and a half. Which is weird that it's like 22 and a half, not 22. I painted the tree of memory, and I gave as life a gift it away. 23, I saw another tree. Really, really weird. Okay. According to Fritz Springmeier, trees play a huge role in monarch mind control programming. Fritz clarifies some very complex esoterica. The tree is a standard programming image upon which mind control programs are attached. The tree itself in the subconscious mind has strong roots, and it feels like death. Give me a second, guys. I'm going to zoom in for my eyeballs. The victim receives the message of the programming and roots it deep, deep down into the oak tree. Remember, the oak tree is the structure that the mind control programs are attached to. Another name for the tree is the Kabbalistic tree of life. There are several other types of trees that can be attached to a person's programming, like the ash, the Yggdrasil, the willow, and the tree of evil. Each of these trees contain different programming structures that contain the codes, cues, triggers, or whatever you want to call these words, noises, sensory inputs that manipulate these poor victims into robotic slaves. For example, in the Alice in Wonderland programming, it starts with the victim going down the tree, going through the mirror, going underneath something, or growing tall. Each program has the tree as the starting point of the programming. When the victim goes down in their mind, they go down on the inside of the trunk. Everything grows small and they go through a keyhole. And Lord Love-a-Duck, the whole thing is about keys. Like, he hypnotizes her with keys and then somehow gives her everything she asks for through these sacrifices. They drink a potion that makes them small as they go down the tree. A tree comes and wraps itself around and loves them. The programs are layered into the subconscious mind, and then the victim ascends up the tree, and a backup amnesia program is brought up, so the victim does not remember that they lost time. Total amnesia about the programming means no danger of revealing to anyone what has happened to them. There are several types of amnesia that mind control victims are programmed with. Two-way amnesia, number 1, where neither alter personality knows about the other's existence. This is what most programmers want for their most alter personalities. They don't want multiple alter personalities to even know they are multiples. Number 2, one-way amnesia, where alter A personality knows alter B personality, but alter B personality doesn't know alter A personality. This can be accomplished by setting in one-way mirrors in the subconscious mind. Number 3, co-presence. This is when two personality alters can come on top of each other at the front of the mind or the conscious mind and hold the body together. This produces some strange behavior for the multiple personality victim, as the alters synthesize their thoughts. Example: when a tough alter personality comes up behind a Christian alter personality, the Christian alter personality may find itself letting loose a curse word without knowing exactly where it came from. When a child alter personality comes up behind an adult alter personality, the adult alter personality finds itself talking like a child. Total self-awareness between alter personalities is very rare. This programming has to do with splitting the mind into many different parts, so alter personalities can be programmed with different skills. To the mind, this looks like a small dot with shadows radiating out like rays from a dark sun, the black sun. It is like a big mess after the torture and programming of the victim. The programmers have to clean up this mess in the mind, so they use the imagery that best resembles the mess they made of the victim's mind. The victim is told they have a tree with branches and leaves growing through them. The programs are attached to the victim's mind by the trees and the branches that run through the mind of the victim. The root program of the tree programming is the method of organizing the various programs, just like a computer's subdirectories branch out to more subdirectories. It is very powerful, and if the programming is tampered with, the slave will want to cut the tree. However, the tree is inside their minds. This means they will very badly want to cut their arms, especially their veins, like the limbs on a tree. When occult rituals are to be performed, the tree will bud, and this is one way the tree connects to the ritual dates. If the tree is barren of leaves, i.e. no programs, or even if the victim has been deprogrammed, then the victim's programs can be told to grow more leaves. The system is very powerful and hard to overcome. The trees also contain gems, which is the fruit of the trees. The fruit contains the programming that is fed to the internal minds of the victims. They eat of the fruit of the tree of evil. The spirit tree also contains the fruit of programming the spirit. The deepest part of the mind control slave is the core, or the heavenly essence of God. It is mentally locked away below the pit. And I underline that, the pit, because that comes up in Lord Leviduc. They talk about the pit. So it's very, very interesting that these same kind of phrases crop up again and again in this research. It is mentally locked away below the pit at the bottom of the victim's mind. It cannot be touched or the victim will die. This is, okay, and I underline this for emphasis. This is the imagery of the tree and why it was so important to Tuesday Weld to put it in her poem 3 times. She gave her tree of life away as a gift. She was hopelessly enslaved by mind control, but she did not give it away as a gift. It was stolen away from her, and that is the tragedy of her life. This is such an extensive topic in Fritz's work. I'm actually going to go into more detail in the system on correspondences because there is way too much info to put here at once. I will call that part tree codes. Mirrors are often a huge component of MK. Oh my gosh, guys, I gotta take a break. Give me 1 second to take a drink. I'm not even halfway, you guys. How long have I been going? 43 minutes. Wow, okay. I'm not even halfway, so yeah, this is definitely gonna be over 2 hours. So give me 1 second. I need to take a little break before I finish this chapter. So a lot of times, in film and predictive programming and music videos, we see mirrors, and mirrors are kind of representations of also altered personalities, split personalities. I'm going to read this part about mirrors. This is exclusively from Fritz Springmeier's book. Mirrors are often a huge, well, it's Fritz Springmeier's and Mr. Teague, Charles Teague. Mirrors are often a huge component of MK. Tuesday was said to have stared at herself in a mirror for hours on end, and like applying her makeup, looking at her figure. Both Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield were enamored with mirrors as well. Both external and internal mirrors are paramount in MK. The first splits in the personality create mirrors. Mirrors are used to create images to confuse victims, allowing in demon spirits, and can also be used to sexually enslave victims with craving sexual dominating alters. Tuesday said, "When I look in the mirror, sometimes I see the child woman they say I am. Sometimes I see a badly spoiled brat I may well be. And sometimes I see nothing at all." Ooh, creepy. And so those are, I noticed another 3. Again, the 3 always crops up with the Tuesday stuff. This is a command to induce the mirror programming in MK. I'm going to read it. It is very creepy. So, warning, hopefully no children are in the room, no pets, no innocent souls. Because it is, I feel creepy reading it, honestly. Okay. Melt into your melted mirror for an electrifying ride. Look deep into the black of my melting mirror eyes. See you reflecting me, reflecting you, reflecting me, reflecting you, reflecting me, reflecting you, until we melt together and sink deep. X, 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 X. So X 6 times. Into the other side. Melt into my mirror. You lose yourself in the pool of liquid mirror. Step into the looking glass. Oh, and the looking glass is really creepy programming. It's so fucking creepy. It's like a kind of like Saw or Texas Chainsaw Massacre when he puts other people's faces on his own face. Ugh, so creepy. Step into the looking glass, sink deep within its pool, and straddle the dimensions in time. I'll see you there along with my friends. See it through the looking glass. Lose yourself in the infinity mirrors. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Hopefully, God, that did not fuck with me right now, just reading that. Who knows if it's real, but yeah, I mean, it's creepy. Anyway. Okay. Many of the 1960s musicians were thought to have had mind control programming, including Jimi Hendrix. Read the lyrics from one of his songs and ask yourself if he experienced mind control mirror image programming. Room full of mirrors. I used to live in a room full of mirrors. All I could see was me. Well, I took my spirit and I crashed my mirrors. Now the whole whole is here for me to see. I've got a whole world that's here for me to see. Now I'm searching for my love to be. Broken glass was falling in my brain, cutting and screaming and crying in my brain. Broken glass was falling in my brain. It used to fall on my dreams and cut me in my bed. It used to fall on my dreams and cut me in my bed. I said making love was strange in my bed. In mind control deprogramming, it is very, very dangerous to break the mirrors in your mind. It can lead to assessing a suicide program that most slaves cannot fight. This is an evil, powerful, destructive program that leads to death. Mirror images are purpose fragments whose job is to confuse both victim and therapist. When an event happens, the abusers will fragment the alter who participated in the event and create mirror images of that alter. This means that no one has the full memory. An alter doesn't know if the mirror image is itself or something else. It's very confusing. A triangle is formed by A, an alter, B, its mirror image, C, demonic mirror images. When an alter tries to recover a memory, it goes round and round in a vicious cycle and finally concludes the memory is false. If one alter holds a memory, an alter close to it will have no feelings attached to the memory and will find it difficult to accept the memory as its own. It's like wearing someone else's coat. It may fit, but it just isn't your own. Mirror images and pseudo-alters are layered in, so that it becomes perplexing to identify where an alter starts and where it ends. Therapists may think they have integrated alters and actually only integrated the mirror images. Looking glass people, which, it's really dark, guys. Looking glass people are similar to the mirror images. The programmers may create a looking glass alter by having a drugged alter of the victim endure the trauma of seeing someone's face peeled. Then the victim's face is also pretended to be peeled by pulling off something like Elmer's glue, which has formed a surface on the victim's face. Then the dead person's skin is placed over the victim being programmed. The looking glass people are charted on grids and contain lots of programs. They are confusing to the regular alters because they appear internally like mirror images. Tuesday displayed a wide range of behavioral patterns from friendly, cooperative, and outgoing to reclusive, eccentric, outlandish, and even bizarre. Sweetness to rage in seconds. Mercurial moods ranging from happiness to despair. She spoke of a recurring nightmare she had of being blinded by thousands of lights. Lights are the sparks MK victims see when being electrocuted and tormented, and I'm going to talk about that later. Another telling quote by Weld: "All my life is a turning point. I do not ever want to be a huge star. Do you think I want success? I turned down Bonnie and Clyde because I was nursing at the time, but also down deep I knew it was going to be a huge success. The same was true of Bob and Carol and Ted and Sue, or whatever it was called. It reeked of success. If I found myself in a commercial success, I'd probably go into a state of shock. If I get out of this underground thing and become commercial, I don't know what I would do." An underground thing is just... This quote illustrates a person that has been under mind control programming. She had trouble sustaining friendships, wanted to be alone, wanted to escape, lost interest in people very quickly, and didn't want too much success. Her underground thing was the role of the high priestess, and it took up a great deal of her time. Her mother stated she would disappear for days on end, and no one knew where she had gone. One time she returned home with a bloody sweatshirt and told her mother she had broken up a fight. Likely story. Much like Kenneth Anger, a recurring theme of baptism by fire is seen in Tuesday's life. In 1971, she received a call in her house in the Hollywood Hills burnt down. There were no boats leaving Catalina Island, and the telephone lines weren't working. She was scared her daughter was in the house, but the maid saved the child in the nick of time. She lost her house, divorced her husband, and her car broke down. Was this a sacrifice of sorts for her place in the echelon? Creepily enough, that same night, Yosine Weld, her mother, had taken Bill Cosby's daughters to watch Fantasia. We now know Bill Cosby's reputation drugging and raping various women, and Fantasia is very integral in MK programming because it has everything the programmers need to create the foundational imagery for trauma-based mind control. To build a dependent alter personality system means that the internal world needs a solid foundation. Fantasia has provided the structure to contain the inner world that the Illuminati slaves build in their minds. Yosine Weld was also a member of the Babysitters Guild, so she was probably instrumental in programming other children in Hollywood as well. Part 2. Lord Love-a-Duck. Before I get into the tree codes and alchemical correspondences, I now want to go into the esoteric analysis of Lord Love-a-Duck. To deconstruct a movie as complex as Lord Love-a-Duck, you need to remember that the movie was not made exclusively for the general movie-going audience. It was a celebration of the coronation of an Illuminati priestess. It was not only a wild and crazy tribute to the swinging 60s and a satirical black comedy to boot. It was a crazy lampoon of all the idiosyncrasies of 60s American pop culture. Celebrity worship, youth culture, beach party movies, consumerism, the school system, pop psychiatry, religious attitudes about sex, the fast food industry, fashion, murder, suicide, and much more. George Axelrod jokes in the promotional short that Lord Loves a Duck may look like a beach picture, but it is actually a booby trap. It is a dark, 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 and foreboding film. What I am going to reveal will shock and awe many people who have seen the movie numerous times and had not gleaned its hidden occult message. And this is all Charles Teague. This is all him, not me. These are his words, not mine. Many movie reviewers stated that it foreshadowed the turbulent times of the 60s and the alienation between parents, the establishment, and social norms, i.e. the generation gap. Well, it was much more than that, and what it did foreshadow had a long-lasting effect on our generation. The expression itself, Lord Love a Duck, is a long-winded rhyme for an expletive that has to remain unuttered in polite company. It is a mild expression of surprise, once well known in Britain and dating back to the early 20th century. I would venture that a modern equivalent to this would be, well, I'll be damned. This would be a most excellent name for the movie, I think. Where to begin? I believe the best focus is George Axelrod. George Axelrod was an American screenwriter, producer, playwright, film director, best known for his play The 7-Year Itch, which was adapted into a movie of the same name starring Marilyn Monroe. He was nominated for an Academy Award for his 1961 adaptation of Truman Capote's Breakfast at Tiffany's, and also adapted Richard Condon's The Manchurian Candidate, 1962. His stage hit was Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, a Faustian comedy about a fan magazine writer, Orson Bean, selling his soul to the devil in the guise of a literary agent to become a successful screenwriter. The movie version starred Jane Mansfield, who is profiled later in Lord Love a Duck. In the trailer to Lord Love a Duck, the narrator referred to him as Master Alchemist. I thought this was rather appropriate title for the director of Lord Love a Duck and the scriptwriter of The Manchurian Candidate. After all, he was transmuting lead into gold, or esoteric knowledge and occult symbolism, into magical stories on the silver screen. The Manchurian Candidate was a foreshadowing of the Kennedy assassination, where the killing was blamed on a patsy, who many believed had been brainwashed to commit the killing. The Robert Kennedy assassination plus the Dr. Martin Luther King assassination both were supposedly committed by lone gun assassins. These were the 3 ritual murders of the 1960s. Again with the 3. Heralding in the new order of ages. It is also revealed for the first time the system of mind control that would become a plague on our times. If this was true, then I asked myself exactly what was Lord Love a Duck all about, and what did it foreshadow? Shot in 1965 and released in 66, it was not a huge success, but has become something of a cult favorite today. Although many think it disjointed and loose, I tend to disagree. It is a movie that has a message. Every scene, every action in the movie delivers a message. The poster of the film showcases an all-seeing eye of Horus, an Ankh or Venus sigil, Lucifer, an egg, a cult symbol for the Orphic egg. That's the whole thing about the duck, it's the egg. So yeah. The plot opens in media res as a cap and gown clad, oddly squawking young man sits at the graduation ceremony where he kills the Jane Mansfield lover character. And he wants to kill that Bob. He kills the Bob guy. Sorry, the Bob guy. The husband of Tuesday. Roddy McDowell, who is her twin, is being chased first by his peers and then by a group of inept policemen, Keystone Cops, at last to the roof where he surrenders. The scene cuts to his interview with a wary psychiatrist, with whom he insists he records his statement, that is, the extended flashback that comprises the remainder of the film. Identified as Alan Musgrave, aka Molly Mock, which is an anagram for Moloch, he insists that he only wanted to fulfill the dreams of Barbara Ann Green, and Green is occult. The emerald green, it does have to do with Satan. Okay. Tuesday Weld, whose deepest and most heartfelt yearnings, he adds, expressed with the movie's theme. Oh, expressed with a touching lyricism, the total vulgarity of our time. Well, that kind of sums up the whole movie's theme. It's about fulfilling the dreams of Tuesday Weld to be famous. Everyone has got to love me. Alan promises he will deliver her desire, sounding like an earnest but youthful Mephistopheles. But what is being delivered is much more than the wish to have people love her. She is loved by the lords of the earth and all the worshippers of the Druids. In secret, she ruled, and in secret she has remained all these years, until being outed a few years ago by a few brave souls. She is said to have left the order in 91 and retired to the mountains of Colorado. She has not answered any of the accusations against her, or made a statement to the press, or anyone for that matter, about what she makes of these inflammatory stories. In the opening scene, Alan sees a butterfly in the Rorschach test, which is the main symbol for monarch mind control. Alan represents the Moloch, the owl, and the keys presented to Barbara Ann, or the goddess. At one point in the film, Alan asks what she is studying, and Weld's character says, "I opted for cosmetology, but they programmed me into plant skills for life." This is a very concise statement about her mind control programming, where she had been conditioned and programmed with planted behavior. With this statement, we now know she could have been consciously aware of her role. That is a revelation because few are granted that awareness. And I only look at Kanye for that. Like, he doesn't, like, he seems to be mind control, but he doesn't seem to be aware of it. Like, she was aware of her role as the high priestess. There is a scene where Martin West, who plays Bob Bernard, winks at us 3 different times. The number 3, the most magical of all magical numbers. The number 3 is always the number used before any mind control action and in ritual practices. The summoning of spirits and demons in rituals calls for the caller to repeat the demon or the spirit's name 3 times. You guys can only think of Bloody Mary, that whole urban legend thing. It's the same thing. Occult ritual and magical numbers are indispensable to each other in Illuminati Druidic ceremonies. In mind control parlance, a wink indicates 2 separate things. Number 1, pay attention and listen to what I have to say. Number 2, there is very important information that is going to be presented. So even at the beginning of the movie, the select are being told how important it is to pay attention to important information that they are about to receive. Another important clue to what is going on is when Tuesday Weld is shown. There is a picture of a silent film actress who I believe was the first movie Illuminati priestess. Her name was Theda Bara. There are several candidates, but I simply can't pin down. Okay. I think it's Theda Bara, because then he says that later. Barbara Ann Green. Her name takes on occult significance with the color green. Green is the highest color in Satanism, and it is the highest color of the Druids. It is not red, as many people believe. Now they arrive on the roof, and he shows her a wet concrete slab where he says they are going to put in their names, or like draw their names in concrete. There is a message in front of the slab that says danger and omen of things to come. He draws a bird in the concrete and says it is a bird thought to be extinct, but it isn't. He etches the name Molly Mock, Mollymauк, and in the concrete, and hands the stick to Barbara Ann to write her name. She says she feels like a movie star with her name in cement and all. Here you see a flash forward to the scene where she meets the public after being famous. Alan, if that's what you want, ? Barbara Ann, someday. Barbara Ann, you cheated. Where's your name? ? Alan, right there. Molly Mock, a bird thought to be extinct. Here, Barbara Ann calls on Molly Mock. Barbara Ann. Okay, she says it 3 times. She repeats the name 3 times as per ritual invocation. 3 times is the number always used to invoke ancient demons and spirits. Alan swings the keys back and forth before Barbara Ann's eyes, putting her into trance hypnosis, which I'll show with the show Homeschool. It's a Thai show, but it shows MK Ultra in practice. with the keys suspended over the concrete block. The concrete block represents a symbolic keystone, the designation of which, when set in place, keys or locks the hole. She is now locked into a contract which she cannot break. The keys are also an analogy to the keys of Solomon, which were calls or summoning for either angels or demons. And I emphasize that because it's important. Barbara Ann, quote, "That's crazy." Alan puts out his keys with the Molly Mock idol on the keychain. "Alan, talk to me. Talk to Molly Mock." Alan swings the keys in front of Barbara Ann and she goes into a trance. She is already under hypnosis. "Alan, just tell Molly Mock." She bears her soul to Molly Mock. "Everybody's got to love me. Everybody. This is my year. My horoscope says I'm going to be famous. I'm a Capricorn, and I can't miss. I deserve it too. I've been very good. I haven't done bad things with boys. Well, a little, but not really bad, and only if I like a boy." Alan shakes the keys and she comes out of trance. She asked him what he was doing with those keys. "Alan, they open everything." Barbara Ann has invoked Molly Mock and told him her desires in trance. She wants to be famous. Her horoscope said she would. You will recall the Scottish Druid, the nurse who did the horoscope at her birth and told her mother she would be famous. So she says she's Capricorn, but she's actually Virgo, August 27th. Yeah, she's Virgo. She would be Virgo. But anyway, it's very interesting that this film is just all about her, even though it doesn't appear to be so from the outside. Who is Molly Mock? Well, we know that the Illuminati god is Moloch Molech. So all you have to do is a phonetic anagram and you have your answer. Molly Mock rearranged is YM Moloch, or I'm Moloch or Molech. I'm Molech. Moloch is one of the ancient Canaanite Phoenician deities worshipped by the Illuminati, i.e. the Brotherhood, the Network, the Order. Moloch was the Canaanite god to whom sacrifices were offered, and these were the children of the worshippers. This was sun worship and Saturn worship all mixed together. And I don't know, I would say a lot of Jupiter too. The Canaanite version of Moloch was a bull. In the Bible, Jeremiah 32:35, and they built the high places of Baal, which are in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through their fires unto Molech, which I commanded them out, neither came into my mind that they should do this abomination, to cause Judah to sin. Alan holds a key, which is something possessing the power to exact sacrifice. The plot continues with the symbol of Sally Grace and her boyfriend Billy Gibbons, who represent Jane Mansfield and Mickey Hargitay / Sam Brody. In the scene, Alan beats up Mickey, which conveys, and also Jane Mansfield / Sharon Tate as well. Alan beats up Mickey, which conveys a message that Moloch is asserting dominance over Jane Mansfield's camp and sending a message that it's Tuesday, not Jane, who is the true high priestess. This is a recurring theme through the film, as Sally and Barbara are in a kind of competition. Real-life Jane was high in the Church of Satanism with Anton LaVey. She performed black rituals and wandered around cemeteries at night. She had a falling out with LaVey, and he allegedly put a death curse on her boyfriend at the time, Sam Brody. In Popular Witchcraft, the 1972 interview with LaVey, he said that the Satanic Bible was partially dedicated to Tuesday Weld because she was the embodiment of the goddess and part of the ritual. What a strange statement to say for someone who was not a member of the Church of Satan or the occult, supposedly. He also spoke of Marilyn Monroe, but stated that Weld was more intelligent and emotionally stable, living approximation of Monroe and Mansfield, who managed to avoid the masochistic fate of her predecessors by eschewing stardom and the public eye, all by design. Alan drives Tuesday home in his car. Alan, Molly Mock doesn't fool around, as you may have noticed. It's just the beginning, Barbara Ann. Just tell him Molly Mock. He'll get it for you. Oh, Molly Mock has lots of tricks. Lots of fun. Molly Mock will show you things you never thought of. He again puts her in a trance with the keychain with the Molly Mock bird icon. But the Molly Mock icon is an owl, not the albatross bird of the cement etching. The owl is the Illuminati symbol for Moloch. It was an owl in the earlier scene also, but it was not as clear to the eye. Alan, you don't have to do anything, just relax. This is a reaffirmation of where she will be given as the next high priestess. All her dreams will come true. Her mother arrives home with her date. She is drunk, and so is her date. She doesn't remember her date's name. Her mother may be something besides a cocktail waitress, i.e., maybe a part-time call girl, sex kitten, in parentheses. Her mother, Marie Lola Albright, says, when she was small, I took her to a gypsy. This little girl is going to cause a lot of trouble. Isn't that what the gypsy said, honey? Wow, talk about prescience. Tuesday's mother, Yosine, was very close and lived her time with a gypsy woman who owned a nightclub in Greenwich Village where artists, musicians, and the like hung out. She might have taken Tuesday there when she was very small. Many scenes in the movie seem to be added to hint at Tuesday being a very special person whose fate was written in the stars. The next scene shows 3 mirror images in one scene. A spotted leopard appears in Marie's room, which is a symbol for a beta sex kitten alter/model that performs sexual favors for their programmers and others, which is the worst kind of abuse. The scene where the principal talks to Alan and tells him not to fight with Billy, he says, I wanted to kill him, which is a veiled threat to Jane Mansfield, i.e., don't interfere with the hierarchy. There is also a veiled reference that Weld turned down Anton LaVey in joining the Church of Satan. Sally Grace, Jane Mansfield /Pharmacos /Sharon Tate, she invites Barbara Ann, Tuesday Weld, to join the Cashmere Sweater Club C Priestess cult, knowing she doesn't have the necessary sweaters qualifications to join. And if you guys know anything about the 50s, sweaters, they were all about sweaters because they were like, oh, girls can wear tight sweaters when we can see their tits. Like, it was a big thing, and they were all about sweaters. And so that's the sweater thing is an actual, like, calling card to this whole shift to out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, or out of the age of Osiris into the age of Horus, that Aleister Crowley is all intent about. I know it sounds crazy, but it's it aligns. Okay. All you need are 12... Okay, so Sally or Jane or whatever says, all you need are 12 cashmere sweaters to join. 12 unique qualifications. And that's what it really means in the esoteric analysis. In the next scene, she is in a classroom with Alan, and Alan is spinning around in his chair. He spins exactly 3 times. Spinning is a technique to put mind control victims into an altered state. Alan is demonstrating this technique before he tells Barbara Ann what they must do to achieve their goal. There will be a sacrifice to be had for this wish. He writes a formula on the chalkboard to achieve the goal. F plus D, G. Father plus divorce equals guilt. Make your father feel guilty. Guilty squared. Father plus divorce, guilt squared. A S father plus divorce plus guilt squared equals sweaters. Barbara Ann, guilty enough for 12 sweaters, question mark. Alan shakes his head and writes 12 plus 1 equals 13. The number 13 on the chalkboard. The arrow he draws to the 13 looks like a devil's tail. Well, now we have it. The esoteric sacred number of the Illuminati, the number 13. Very weird. Very, very weird. Okay. And then it gets even fucking weirder. So, the sweater scene. Well, and this is just like someone doing a review of this. While an uproarious scene, the level of what the fuck is off the chart. Another reviewer wrote, every film that starts out to offend, as most black comedies do, needs at least one set-piece moment of sublime vulgarity. Lord Love a Duck boasts an irresistibly over-the-top shopping spree for cashmere sweaters that erupts into a father-daughter consumer orgy. The screwball suggestive colors of the sweaters provide as many laughs as the incestuous orgasmic reactions they elicit. Grape yum yum, banana beige, lemon meringue, pink put on, papaya surprise, periwinkle pussycat, turquoise trouble, midnight a go-go, and peach put down. At this point in the film, I was aware this person's fucking weird. They're like, I love this film. Fucking weird. Barbara Ann got her sweaters at the price she paid was to make her father feel guilty and even get him incestuously leering at her. Alan convinces her to apply for the secretary job opening with the principal, Weldon, Emmett. He questions her about why she wants the job. She flatters him to get her out of plant skills class, which is what she said she was programmed to do. Which is a kind of weird way to say you're studying something. When I was studying in school, I never said I am programmed for political science. Although that's probably what I should have said. And I should have said it like that anyway. But yeah. It's funny that she said program for plant skills. She leans over his desk seductively and he notices her sweater and inquires about what kind of sweater she's wearing. He fills her sweater. She says it's midnight a go-go and she tells him she has a different one for each day. And then there's just this weird sexual shit going on with her and the principal. And she seduces him, and then always a price, always a sacrifice. Okay. One of the following scenes is in a hair salon, and there are photos of the first high priestess, Theta Bara, and Jane Mansfield. There is more one-eyed symbolism. The Sally Jane character puts a beauty mark on her breast. Many kitten altars have moles, beauty marks, and breast implants, spotted leopard, sex kitten. There is a category of mind control trauma, those which are employed to produce cosmetic looks. For instance, a breast implant or electric shock is used to create moles at certain locations, either as a sign telling other mind control handlers the extent of the programming, or to create a Marilyn Monroe or Jane Mansfield look. A stage trick is to use a multi-needle device to scar the skin tissue. A scar is made in a pattern which can be made visible by hypnotic command. This allows the mind control handler to look powerful to uninformed viewers. This stage trick has been done by the occult world for centuries. It is believed that breast implants have some kind of effect on raising histamine production levels in the body. Whether these breast implants are identical to what all breast implants are, or whether they have something special to agitate the body into higher immune cell production of the mast cell and basophils type is not known. However, there seems to be some relationship between the network's need to raise histamine levels in their slaves and the breast implants that they are putting in them. Putting the pieces together leads one to believe that the implants agitate the body's immune system into raising the level of the histamine-carrying cells. A number of women have gotten implants speak of an increase in allergies. An allergic reaction is caused by high levels of histamine. Teague states that this mark is the mark of pharmakos, or the mark of human scapegoat or sacrificial victim. According to Fritz Springmeier, Marilyn Monroe was an orphan, and during her infancy, she was an Illuminati CIA programmed to be a monarch slave. Before becoming an actress, while she was still a stripper, she spent time with the founder of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey. Again, Anton LaVey pops up with Kenneth Anger, Tuesday Weld, Marilyn Monroe, Charles Manson, countless others. Okay. Victims of LaVey have pointed to him as a mind control programmer. At that time, Marilyn was going by several names, including Mona. When they made her a star, Marilyn lived on the 13th floor in 13E at Sutton Place, New York, the world of the rich and famous. That is where Lena came to help her. However, Marilyn's existence was not that of a rich person, but was more like that of an inmate. Marilyn was not allowed to have a personal life outside of the dictates of her programmers and her masters. The programmers and users bore down so hard on controlling her that they repeatedly came close to driving her insane. Because Marilyn had no real friends, she concentrated on herself. The closest friend Marilyn had is saying that Marilyn had no real friends. Doesn't that strike someone as strange? Marilyn didn't have any real friends, almost like the only ones in her life were her abusers, and they worked hard to strip her of any personal goals or esteem. Anything the slave gets is going to come at a price. The slave will have to do something in return for the network. Illuminati altars are promised power, honor, glory, and wealth. Considering the power and wealth of the elite, they do have the resources to make good on this if they want. However, the price of obedience might be to shave one's head in submission or to sacrifice a child. And that's what Fritz Springmeier says. At age 16, they give birth and they have to sacrifice the child. And so Tuesday Weld became the high priestess at age 15. So it kind of gives you kind of like a window to the pattern of behavior of these creepos. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the movie Lord Loveduck. It's getting to the really, really interesting part, guys. I'm telling you. I know this is a lot of info and you're probably bored, but I'm telling you, the next part is like total predictive programming and it's really crazy. Okay, so give me 1 second. Now the film goes to Balboa Park. One of the major following scenes involves a carousel. The carousel is a major component in mind control programming. When a child is 3 or 4, they would torture the child and put them on a ride such as a Ferris wheel or a carousel that A, created disassociation from pain, spinning away from pain, while B, went along with some fairy tale programming script. The children are spun at very fast speeds for long periods of time that cause them to disassociate and go into altered state of mind. Behavior scripts can then be programmed into their minds. They are also drugged and tortured to achieve maximum states of altered reality. It is interesting to note for those who realize how important carousels are to programming. MI6 in Vauxhall Cross, England, had its training center nicknamed Carousel by the Mossad, Israeli CIA. Amusement parks do this type of programming after hours at night. Disneyland and Disney World are said to be the biggest centers for this type of mind control programming. And there's this guy named Professor, I can't remember his name, but he just did a video that said like how the average American destroyed the Disney hypnotic cult or some shit like that. Like, I want to play that because I think that guy's kind of interesting. He has some really interesting insights to social engineering in general through an kind of a traditional academic standpoint, but yeah, Disney's fucked. Okay, guys, this is the part that blew my mind. Other than the plane crash day the music died, this is the craziest shit ever. Okay, so listen up. So this is the part of Lord Loveduck and the part of Teague's research that blew my mind the absolute most. Next, a young man with a Beach Boys striped t-shirt is seen playing a guitar for a young woman, while another young man with the same striped t-shirt is next to him, looking on. I believe they represent Brian and Dennis Wilson, and I will explain why in a second. Now comes a scene where we see the back of a long-haired girl dancing with a young man. And this is kind of weird. It's like, you were like, oh, it's a girl. She turns around and you see it's not a young girl, but the long-haired bearded man with a radio to his ear. Well, hello there, Charles Manson. Welcome to Tuesday's World. There are several clues that point to the way that this is Charles Manson. Number 1, every young man on the beach has very short hair except the long-haired bearded young man. Number 2, the radio is a reference to the fact that Charles Manson loved music and wanted to have a career in the field. He used music to attract young men and women. Number 3, He was dancing with a young man on the beach, and Charles Manson admitted that he was bisexual and loved to have sex with men and women. Number 4, the close proximity of the two striped young men representing the Beach Boys in the same sequence. What we have here is a young Charles Manson years before becoming a national villain. 3 years, to be exact, like in the national spotlight when the actual murders, quote-unquote, occurred of his minions. Gathering all his young followers on the mind-controlling programming carousel. They will follow him to 10050 Seal Drive and the murder of a very pregnant Sharon Tate, J.C. Bring, and all the others. This is so strangely unbelievable that I watched the movie several times before, and this is Teague. Like, Teague figured this shit out, so give him props, guys. Give him a fucking round of applause, because this is fucking... I don't want to watch this movie. It sounds so creepy and weird. So, he's done all the work. This is so strangely unbelievable that I watched the movie several times before I actually made the connection. Long-range plans for murder and mayhem are one of the trademarks of the Illuminati, and they love to throw out clues that only they will understand. This has also remained a secret for almost 50 years. Charles Manson was a regular visitor of Dennis Wilson and stayed at his place for a time, trying to get a record contract going through with the studios. He was also a regular visitor to Laurel Canyon Mountaintop, where all the musicians of LA scene hung out and lived. Read the series by Dave McGowan, referred to earlier in the article, for in-depth analysis and information on Charles Manson. One important clue was almost missed, but yours truly doesn't miss much. I would agree. I think this guy's pretty on point. The medallion that Charles Manson has around his neck has the head of an owl on it. Hello, Moloch. A beautiful young lady, Sally Grace, Jane Mansfield, Sharon Tate, wears more than an interesting bikini, is being carried aloft on a surfboard in front of the carousel by 8 young men, like pallbearers at a funeral. I believe that this is a preview of the funeral of Sharon Tate. Now it is revealed that the Sally Grace character is a pharmakos, a sacrificial lamb or human sacrifice. She now represents both Jane Mansfield and Sharon Tate in this profane, unholy, and occult stage psychodrama. Soon you will learn the horrendous secret hidden in plain sight murder of Sharon Tate. Tuesday Weld owned a home in Laurel Canyon in the 1960s, so it is almost certainty that she was well aware of the music scene, drug use, murder, fires, and other strange goings-on occurring there. Laurel Canyon is a very small enclave of homes situated east of Sunset Boulevard in a wooded, hilly area that is secluded and very private. Later, she lived off Sunset Boulevard when the drug murders on Hollywood Lane in Laurel Canyon took place. She was always close to the action no matter where it was occurring in LA. Marilyn, Jane, and Sharon were the 3 ritual sacrifices, which align with the 3 male ritual sacrifices of the plane crash. Another scene, Alan. I think it's funny. And it's weird because the show that I am going to show you guys, or showed you guys, they select 3 girls to be the first for treatment, MK, mind control, and they select 3 boys. Or maybe 2 boys. Maybe it's 5. But anyway, it's so crazy that I'm watching this show that's about mind control at the same time I'm researching mind control. It's fucking weird. Okay. Another scene. Alan. So Alan is the Moloch representation. I think it's funny. You and that toy person. How could I be mad? Old Saint Bernard, or whatever his name is. He's not real. He's like one of the toys manufacturers get. Like one of the Ken and Barbie dolls. And the Barbie movie... I keep seeing the commercials for it on YouTube. I'm like, fucking die. You dress them, you undress them, you buy them clothes, you wind them up, and their little hearts go flubba-dub-dub, and they're not real. But they're not real. Well, that's as simple as an explanation of what mind-controlling a program slave is. It's at this point in the movie where Barbara really wants to marry Bob, but his mother, the grandmother, must approve. This is an analogy to the Grand Dame mother presenting Tuesday as the new high priestess of the Illuminati in the conversation pit, or the pit of the High Druid Council. And I talked earlier about the pit as being That's the inaccessible part of the mind that is accessed only by God in the victim, and the handlers can't get to that part. So it's weird that where they speak is called the pit as well. Okay. What is of note in these circles is that there's always a sacrifice. Tuesday's father died at age 3, when she was age 3. Jane Mansfield's father died when she was age 3. Marilyn Monroe was an orphan. Is this a ritual requirement that the father must be sacrificed? In another scene, Tuesday flouts her newfound authority over the principal's office by sitting at his desk. There is a skull of a goat, Baphomet, sitting on the desk. Barbara also earlier referenced that she is a Capricorn, the goat or the Baphomet. Mother Bernard at one point says, "Each man kills the thing he loves, death wish pure and simple, sins of the father as it were." This reminds me of like people that have to join the higher orders of the secret societies, and also people that have to be skinwalkers. You have to sacrifice someone in your own family or rape them in the skinwalker. I don't know in the secret societies, but in the skinwalker I know for sure it's those two things. To be a practitioner of kind of the wicked way, because in the Navajo way, like, it's the way of beauty is the traditional way, and then if you practice black magic, you're practicing like the witching way. So there's a very strange sequence with Barbara Ann's mother, Marie, who is alluded to be a prostitute, and Mary, it's going to be talked about with Fritz Springmeier part. The grandmother does not want Bob marrying Barbara due to Mary's sullied repute. There's a creepy scene where Marie listens to a message on the phone with this countdown sequence of 11:07. And 1 + 1 is the 2 pillars, and then 7 is the generative. So that's why, like, the 9/11 was World Trade Center 1 and 2, the male and the female, and then the 7 was like the God number. All those buildings fell down. This hypnotic repetitive mantra activates the suicide program or collapse of the self. It is shown that Alan is the main reason why Marie kills herself in order for Barbara Ann to marry Bob. The theme is that Moloch, Alan, has the way to marry Bob, but the price is the life of her mother, the sacrifice. Barbara Tuesday then marries Bob, but tires of him almost immediately. At that point, Alan tries to murder Bob for Barbara. Sam Brody, Jane Mansfield's boyfriend, died in a car crash in 1968, 2 years later. Alan unsuccessfully poisons Bob before killing him with heavy machinery. At graduation, like Sam Brody, died of a car crash. It is also shown that Sally Gray / Jane / Sharon Tate character is pregnant. So sacrifice and pregnant sacrifice of real-life actors made allusions to in not-so-popular fiction. I don't know if Sam Brody was an actor, but I think Mickey Hargitay was, and just weird shit. Okay. The final scene. That evening at the studio, Barbara Ann is getting ready to be presented to her adoring public. Barbara Ann, "I can't do it." The producer, T. Harrison Belmont, reassures her. They stand in front of her wedding bed, ? The pictures of the first movie, Illuminati Priestess, again, this is like the 3rd time it's shown, is on the bed, so Theta Bara, with the picture of Jane Mansfield, the soon-to-be replaced priestess, on the floor, with the picture of the strange man with the tattooed face on the easel beside the bed. Who the hell is this guy? This is some weird, strange, and occult background scenery to honor her coronation march to her waiting public. The wheelchair is also there to remind us of the sacrifice that was required. She is wearing the beauty mark, the fake mole, on her left cheek, which I already discussed what the meaning of that was. She strolls out with a smile on her face to meet the crowd and sits on the hood of the car greeting everyone. "Harry, ladies and gentlemen, the star of my newest and most important film, T. Harrison Belmont presents Barbara Ann Green in Bikini Widow." Bikini Widow refers to the death of Bob. This is the 3rd time Harry says the word bikini, so everything is repeated in threes in this movie as well. She wants to meet with the public, but he rushes her into the car. Her life is no longer her own. The Bikini Atoll or nuclear explosion has analogies with the Babylon working. Twin Peaks: The Return, and bringing the horror of Babylon into the world again. Scarlet Woman. This is a veiled reference to Jack Parsons, Marjorie Cameron, and Aleister Crowley. This is essentially Lord Loveduck. If your head isn't a scrambled egg, I don't think you're a proper human. Very high strangeness, but something worth noting indeed. Part 3. Tree Codes and Alchemical Correspondences of Ruby Tuesday. Tree codes and other programming codes. If we recall earlier, Weld wrote a poem. With 3 lines or years of her life, she stated she saw a tree or trees. Very cryptic, and I touched on it earlier through Fritz's interpretation of the Kabbalistic tree, as well as the monarch tree programming. I want to repeat this section in full, as it is far too complex for me to simplify it in any meaningful way. Fritz Springmeier, quote, "Let the reader picture 3 circles in a line. These 3 circles sit at the top of the Kabbalistic tree of life. They are the top 3 circles of 10 circles, which all have names within an Illuminati monarch slave. The central circle is the crown and holds the honored altar, who is actually the bride of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is also known as the Black Saturn and other names. Satan himself is known within a monarch system, often by the name Belair, Balar, or Bilid, which are his Kabbalistic names. The honored altar, who is married to him, sits on a pedestal revolving with 2 other altars. In the occult world, goddesses are triune, maiden, mother, and crone. The one to the left of the center is Midnight, the mother figure, and the other is Morning Star, the maiden. Morning Star Stella Matutina may be a very young altar rather than a teenager. On top of the Kabbalistic tree of life will sit a pyramid. Each of the 10 circles, rooms for the altars who live in them, of the tree of life is created with a different Illuminati ceremony. Before a Mother of Darkness monarch slave is 16, they will have gone through all the ceremonies involved in the creation of the altars, which correspond to the 10 rooms of the tree of life. At age 16, the system's demons will then guide the system on a personalized pathway, and a baby, the firstborn, will be sacrificed by the system. The blood of this firstborn is spiritually placed in a box under the tree of life. This is in accord with the Lilith story. The spirit Lilith, sometimes with an altar Lilith, will work with the spirits of Zerodiath and Lucifer. There are several trees which can be placed within a monarch slave, including the ash, the oak, the Yggdrasil, and the willow, and the tree of evil, which is an evil counterpart to the tree of life. These will be dealt with under the chapter on structures. This chapter will provide the hypnotic codes, cues, triggers, or whatever one wants to call these words, noises, and sensory inputs that manipulate these poor victims turned into monarch robots. What are the codes like? Gematria plays a role in monarch codes. Gematria is a Kabbalistic teaching about numbers meaning letters. These are the magical numbers that also serve as letters to the Hebrew alphabet. Certain deeper altars are good at working at astral levels. These altars have astral or craft codes and code names, which will include codes from the names of herbs, spices, jewels, and alphanumeric codes. Simple equation codes are also used in the deeper levels. Speaking of roses, rosemary, the rose of Mary, is an occult term for a woman who conceives a dark child. It is also associated with the fragrance of the mint family. The willow tree versus oak tree as a programming hanger for Mariah's programming altars of an Illuminati system, due to programming, will perceive a tree growing in them, which has roots in their feet and its trunk and branches extending throughout their body. Upon the tree, fruit programs are placed. Illuminati programs may be to cut a tree limb off, which is actually the victim's arm, or for a certain part of the body to get hot, or for a certain part of the body to physically change in some way. These are attached via the tree imagery. Both oak and willow trees are used. Why might a programmer choose a willow tree rather than an oak tree in the basic programming? The answer lies in why a tree is used in the first place. A tree is used because of its imagery and because of its magical powers, according to Druidism. There are a number of images a tree provides, and there are a number of magical powers too. We will discuss the contrast to develop our answer. The oak is a powerful druid item, but the willow tree is also sacred. The oak is so well connected to the druids that some of the other sacred trees of the druids are not quickly recognized as sacred. Let us now look at the intrinsic imagery advantages of the willow, and then the magical properties it might contribute. The combination of the two will then provide us with the complete answer as to why a willow tree rather than an oak tree might be used. Imagery. The imagery of a tree is used because it has branches, leaves, and a root system. These items are manipulated for programming purposes. For instance, in the Alice in Wonderland programming, the girl jumps hypnotically into the tree and falls, hypnotically falling deeper and deeper into the roots of the tree. The deep root system of the willow is an advantage over the shallow root system of the oak. When a storm comes, the willow bends and doesn't break, kind of like bamboo, while the oak is rather stiff and breakable. Since these trees are programmed into a person, a flexible tree that can't be broken is an advantage. The wrapping around imagery of the branches gives a great deal of flexibility for programming and a stronger imagery than the oak. The willow draws water from deep below. The tree is the tree of life. The programs are the life of the system, and the Bible is used to validate the programming. For instance, the tree of life by the river, Revelation 22, is used. There are some other images that are important too. During Illuminati rituals, the willow branches are used as whips to cleanse people of the victims of programming. The image of a willow branch could easily trigger the memories of being punished, whipped, and being cleansed, and this in turn would help hold the programming in place. The fruit of the trees are the programs, and some of the fruit can be eaten and some not. Sometimes children's stories are about lunch pails hanging from the trees, or fruit in the trees is used to create a place for the individual programs are hung. Or this could be a place for the front programs, and the more important programs are stored away somewhere more secret. Bear in mind the trees in the programming sing and are able to wrap themselves around people if they're going where they aren't supposed to go. The willow has that flexibility naturally, so it is easier to imagine it wrapping itself around a person. Magical properties. Most everything that is done, programming-wise, has a dark spiritual significance to it too. The programmers will look for things that serve their purpose, both here and in the spiritual realm. The willow tree is used to make witches' wands and to help make witches' brooms. Birch can also be used. It is planted around druid Celt graves to protect them spiritually. It is believed to have magical sexual powers. It is possible that some of these programmers might prefer the magical sexual powers of the willow rather than those properties said to come from the mighty oak. That is not all of willow's magical powers. It is connected with February and April in different ways and magically connected with spring. It's possible that the person receiving a willow tree might be born in this time period. It is possible that what type of tree is selected could sometimes be related to when a person is born. Some programmers might be into being time appropriate. This would depend upon the belief of the programmers. The imagery of the willow's magical sexual properties could be worked into the programming, as certain altars might be asked to make certain brews or taste certain things hypnotically. This would be done at such a deep level it might not be known. Just as in the case of the Alice in Wonderland programming, when a person drops clear to the bottom of the tree roots, they find themselves small and they go through a door. But when they come back, the altar is not going to remember the trip and what they ate on the hypnotic trip down the tree. Further considerations on the choice of trees. It is possible that we can question the question. That is, perhaps the question is not the oak or the willow tree was used to the exclusion of the other, but that both trees were used in the programming. Generally, this seems to be the case. In one particular case, it is possible that in a double system, the oak tree, and like she said, she saw different trees, so maybe she saw different trees being blended together through the various rituals. The oak tree, being the more obvious druidic symbol and quite strong, was used in the front system, and the totally secret second system has the willow utilized. When the one person attempted to snap the oak tree at ground level in a crude attempt to deprogram themselves, the root system regenerated itself through the first mirror image, and what came back was more spirit and more deadly. I know this is really very fucking deep and hard to grasp, so if you don't understand it, don't beat yourself up. I barely understand myself. But I want to get it out here, so. Remember, the tree serves as an umbilical cord linking via its roots to the person to their spiritual life force, which are the evil spirits which command and drive the system. However, when the oak tree and its mirror image and the spiritual protectors, hideous spirits, were properly done away with, and then further deprogramming done, cracks seem to have developed behind the pyramid crystal, which allowed the person's original set of altars to experience a new or double system. Since that has happened, it seems that there has been an increased drawing to willows. In other words, for this particular victim, it is conjectured that the front system, the fully operational set of altars, has an oak, and the duplicate set of altars, which were each broken off of each of the original set, have a system with a willow tree. Kind of like if the oak broke, the willow kind of reinforced it, if that makes sense. The tree roots, of course, are the umbilical cord to the source, the waters that spiritually feed it. These relate to soul ties. These roots have to be dealt with spiritually. They are so interwoven that they tie a person completely up with the roots and programs that are interwoven and wrapped around each other. Other high-level Illuminati survivors have also a front tree and a back tree. Another consideration is that the trees have flowers planted around them. Uprooting the trees are not sufficient for deprogramming because the flowers are the deeper generational material and will regenerate the trees. Touching Lilith's box under the tree can release owls and monkeys. What the fuck? And other animals that are dangerous. A generic code often can be used to take out the flowers. Wow. Holy shit. If you're still with me, you're a fucking savage. Okay. What are the other trees? Another important occult tree. Other important occult trees are the tree of the Knight's Table and the tree of alchemy. There's such a thing as tree magic, which involves many kinds of trees and tree spirits. The actual tree around the world-wide occult belief has the earth revolving about it. Many survivors, of course, have the oak, willow, or ash trees placed in as their principal tree or as their backup tree. The final backup trees is an ill. System might be the occult Yggdrasil, I don't know how to say it, Yggdrasil tree, ash tree. The Yggdrasil tree has 3 roots, spiritual, terrestrial, and infernal, and has a cosmic egg attached to it. Generally, only one tree is mentioned, but a backup tree exists, and a third tree, which is a backdoor backup tree. Therapists should be cautioned that these trees often come in groups of 3. Okay. This is where it gets really interesting with the mother, maiden, crone programming. So just give me 1 second, guys. I need to really get hydrated here. Okay, this is going to explain the tree and the flower system. What are the backups? Beside the principal tree, the programmers will often plant a flower that represents the generational ties. If the tree is taken out, the flower will regenerate the tree. The petals, the flower center, the stem, and the roots represent different generations of the victim. Understanding the maiden mother crone combination in the Mothers of Darkness. Therapists are going to find Illuminati slaves have 3 altars placed. Oh my god, guys. Sorry, my plant just fell down. Holy shit. I gotta go grab it. Okay, it's okay. It's just really windy. It's like, oh no. My philodendron. Okay. This is a part of how these systems are structured. The maiden is set up on the pedestal as the A altar. The first programming chart, which shows all the A altars in the system, consists only of the young maiden mothers. The mother or second figures are close behind the A's. However, the crone part of these triads is meant to hide in the background. So that's what, like, Tuesday represents. They serve as the power of advice behind the scenes. So that's what Tuesday actually is, even though she has aspects of the mother, because she was a mother, and the maiden as well. These Mother of Darkness triads participate in various ceremonies. Their initial initiation ceremonies include water torture, with electroshock, which is the death, burial, and resurrection ceremony. There are the full range of satanic holidays, which is the death, burial, and resurrection ceremony. There are the full range of satanic holidays for the mothers, and a look at the full range of holidays will provide a person with the type of ceremonies that the mothers carry out, which include 2 solstices. Different Mother of Darkness altars participate in different ceremonies. The inside of their black velvet gowns are color-coded, so that within the ranks of the mothers are the whole series of ranks grades. All of these mothers' parts have been told they are divine goddesses. The following information will clarify this further. The mother, or A parts. The mother part of the goddess trinity is the highest point in all cycles. Traditionally, her color is red, the color of life force. So that's like the pomegranate and the high priestess. The mother is associated with adulthood and parenthood. The mother is ripeness and balance. Mothers actively work magic. She is a nurturer. She is confident and has no indecision. The mother knows what she is. She is the full moon. Summer is the mother's time of the year, but the full moon is her monthly point of power. She is honored by Beltane, May 1st, summer solstice, and Lunasa, August 1st. As stated before, there are certain rituals for which call mothers rather than a maiden or a crone. Maiden, or B parts. The young maiden part of the mothers is the equivalent to the apprentice level of the mystery schools and Freemasonry. The myth holds that the maiden will be eternally youthful. Even with the aging process, the goddess can experience youthfulness in the mind. The maiden is the creatress of new ideas. She is the armed huntress of the mother's laws. She is the guardian of the balance. She is aware of her sexuality. She is independent and not controlled by men. She is the way shower, the keeper of the keys. You will find the maiden in the following rituals: new beginning ritual plans for conception, the birth of a child, the first menstruation for girls, puberty ritual for boys. Okay. The crone, or C parts. These altars rarely show themselves. They stay in the shadows and pass on advice. The crone aspect of the triad goddesses has been called the terrible mothers, the hag. Okay, I'm going to talk about the hag in the correspondences to Tuesday. So there's a correspondence to the crone to Tuesday as well. The dark mother, the wise one. She is associated with the black, death, winter, menopause, wisdom, counsel, reincarnation, and the initiator into the deepest of the mysteries. The waning moon is her monthly time of power. The crone's number is 9. 9 is a number of wisdom and sacred magic. 9 is also a moon number, which means spiritual completion and wholeness. The crone has a cauldron. She is the great recycler. She is the ultimate teacher. She contacts the spirits and is an expert on demonology. She is the keeper of spiritual records. She is the shadow behind the mother's throne. According to the occult, she is the elder of unlimited wisdom. There are certain rituals which call for the crone, such as winter solstice. The crone completes the wheel or cycle of existence of the mothers of darkness. She is most likely in the system the most dehumanized of the three that sits on the pedestal. The following are a sampling of the goddesses you will find. Since the names of these goddesses are not secret, it is possible for people who are not in the occult to track down what popular goddess names are. Here are a few that are placed in systems: Hathor, Ishtar, Isis, etc. So there's like a lot more names, but I didn't include them here. Okay. So I'm going to keep going. This is more of the Fritz Springmeier book and just like stuff that I thought was really interesting to the Tuesday story. And an ex-programmer states that the Illuminati mind control intentionally uses verses from every book of the Bible. The programmers also intentionally used everything Jesus said in one distorted way or another in the programming. A person can pick up a Bible with Jesus' words in red and get a quick idea of one area of the Bible which was heavily misused. The programmers love to reframe twist parables. The Catholic Jesuit programming relies heavily upon the Bible. The Bible verse ECL, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it. It is better not to vow than to vow and not pay. Is used by MK4 dash 4 parentheses 28 through 32. And he said, whereunto shall we liken the kingdom of God? It is like a grain of a mustard seed. But when it is sown, it groweth up, and become greater than all herbs, and shooteth out great branches, so that the fowls of the air may lodge under the shadow of it. In this programming, a tree is programmed mentally into the victim's entire body. The tree carries the program, and the birds nest in it. The scripture is used for the imagery of part of the programming. MT 6:22 through 23. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? These words are used with a mean programming trick where disobedient altars are pulled up, locked into place, placed mentally within crystal chandeliers, and then the sexual organs, mouth, and side of the brain are shocked in sequence. The light does a severe shattering to all the altars which experience the shocks. This shatters the disobedient altars, and they are replaced with others. This is what Tuesday went through, most likely, when she had the fear of the nightmare having to do with light. Portals and focal points. Within the occult world, the entire study of demonology is wrapped around the geometric shapes that serve as focal points for demons. Sigils, I would say, such as made by crystals and pyramids and sigils. And the portals by which demons can enter the human body. A demon doesn't have to be materialized, conjured up to enter into a body. Geometric shapes, which are believed to attract demons, are placed into the internal world of slaves. The will of the person also plays a role in the introduction of demons into the body. Torture attaches and layers in demons within the body. Sex and blood sacrifices are used to attach powerful demons. According to high-level demonology, certain powerful spirits can only be manipulated if there is a blood sacrifice. This may seem strange, however, the record evidence bears out that generational victims of possession who have had demons placed in via blood sacrifice are definitely controlled by more powerful demonic forces. All of the chakra points and the orifices to the human body serve as portals. Both the Illuminati and Christian deliverance ministries agree that the mouth, ears, nose, anus, etc. are portals. High influxes of demonic energy into the body is accompanied by a burning sensation. The mother of darkness who is assigned to a child who is being programmed has to oil the child periodically to protect it from this burning. The goal is to possess someone of spirits, or to be possessed by spirits, has been practiced since the early times of mankind. Satanism and Luciferianism and other similar cults are blood cults that require blood to be sacrificed to pull in certain demons. For instance, blood may be taken from both the tongue and the genital area and mixed in with certain ceremony to invoke a particular demon. Demons are not bought with gold or silver. They are bought with blood. Some spirits are invoked by placing alcoholic enemas into the child. These children get totally intoxicated with alcohol, some to the point that they even die from the ceremony. This is all done to bring in particular demons. The spirit Chorazon and Typhon are critical spirits to place into a person for the mind control to work. The Illuminati do not believe the mind control will work without the assistance of these spirits. Typhon and Chorazon do the tunneling and multiple personality disorder work. While Americans think of 1776 as Independence Year, 1776 was originally chosen as the most favorable year to reorganize the mystery religions into the formal Illuminati, because 1776 consists of 1100 and 666. 1100 is the Babylonian counting system for the number 666. Babylonian Satanism is a foundational part of Illuminism. One of the important keys to success with monarch programming are generational spirits. The cover for this is Studies in Genetic Science. The programmers believe that genetics are important, but the real abilities to program someone come from the generational spirits that are built up in the bloodlines. This is why the Illuminati were in part skeptical that non-generational occult bloodlines could be successfully programmed. They have found that they can be, especially with all their high-tech equipment, but the best candidates are those with strong generational spirits. And that's why I put this part in, because it has to do with Tuesday and her pedigree. The difference could be compared to those who raise racehorses for the Kentucky Derby and those who have horses as a hobby. A racehorse must have high spirits. The suburban housewife and daughter who ride as an occasional pastime could care less for the quality of the horse. The military can produce cannon fodder with the simple mind control of basic training. They don't need sophisticated time-intensive mind control techniques like the Monarch program for some military positions. Third world children are being programmed to become baseball players, etc. But the highest occult avocational positions will be given to people with exceptional generational demonic power. There are also color codes for types of altars. Here are the altars I found most relevant to Tuesday Weld's character. Red. These altars see themselves as witches. They were born out of witchcraft ritual because they have great spiritual power and tend to deny they have been abused. Green or emerald green. These cat altars recognize they have been abused. They still see themselves as belonging to the cult family and deny that they haven't been abused to protect their cult family. So, she had both those aspects because she both loved her mother and hated her mother. And, yeah. Very interesting. Okay. Final notes of import on Monarch Mind Control. For any recipe, you need a cook. So who has been cooking up the recipe for making Monarch slaves? The authors felt that after reading the recipe that some readers would be interested in learning about the master chefs who make human robots using trauma-based mind control. According to an ex-programmer, the programmers for decades have been treated like royalty whenever they step foot onto a military base or enter a hospital that carries out mind control. They are always expected. Generally, the commanding general on a base would meet with them and escort the programmer in a limo. If the base commander couldn't make it, an important physician might take his place. The programmers have keys and codes to get into special areas. After many thousands of Americans died in World War II, fighting Nazism, our government's intelligence agencies, including the military intelligence groups, in cooperation with the Illuminati and its people in the Vatican, smuggled 10,000 of the worst Nazi fascist war criminals into the country. This is on public record now. Part of this was under Operation Paperclip. The Department of Defense also worked at smuggling Nazi mind control programmers under Project 63. Every World War II veteran who fought ought to be angry that after putting his life on the line for democracy and freedom, quote, democracy. We all know how I feel about that. Okay. And freedom, and supposedly defeating the Nazis, our government brought in men like the SS's infamous butcher, Dr. Joseph Mengele, to program American children with trauma-based mind control like he had in the concentration camps. In fact, Fritz has worked with an Illuminati victim of Joseph Mengele, who was programmed in Germany in a concentration camp and then smuggled to the U.S. via Canada by Jesuits working with the Illuminati. Once in the U.S., this person continued to be programmed by Mengele, who went by many names, including Dr. Green. Barbara Ann Green. He is described in detail in Part D of this appendix. We must begin to get beyond the fronts and covers that the programmers have for the world. Jewish professor Ernest Bergman of the famous Leipzig University is also surprisingly a strong advocate of Nazism. His main book is A National Socialist Philosophy of Culture. He writes, a new type of mankind is being developed. He is mentioned here so that people will stop looking at labels and start looking at what is really going on. One of the principal goals of Nazism was to remake mankind. The anarchy of the Nazis was to set up to do genetic research and experiments, and one element of that was to be able to create the perfect obedient mind control slave. Tuesday Weld hated men with beards and mustaches. Was this due to the fact that she was programmed and controlled by Mengele and perhaps other Nazi scientists of the time? Nelson Rockefeller had enormous power in South America. In June 1945, when the UN was being set up in San Francisco, Nelson Rockefeller attended. While Nelson Rockefeller was there, he busied himself with directing the South American delegates. Rockefeller's bloc of the 19 Latin American countries had more UN votes than Europe's 9 members. Rockefeller was key person if the Zionists wanted the UN to vote so that the nation of Israel could be established. The Zionist leadership used what they thought was blackmail. If you don't let Israel be established, we will expose how you are smuggling Nazi war criminals into the U.S. Of course, the Illuminati wanted Israel to be created so that those in the Zionist leadership who knew of the bigger plans of the Illuminati knew that the Illuminati-run CIA wasn't giving up on anything. If anyone asked today why the Mossad didn't expose MI6 and the CIA's extensive hiring of Nazi war criminals, they said today that they were using it for blackmail to get Israel what it needed. Those in the know realize that it is just an excuse. The Mossad has hired its own share of Nazi criminals, and at some point learned mind control programming from the CIA, perhaps even from Mengele, Dr. Green. The Nazis used Croats and White Russians to carry out some of their genocide policies. Okay, so Tuesday Weld lived in Colorado for at least almost 20 years. Here are the places in Colorado pertinent to MKUltra. Boulder, Colorado, the headquarters for EMC, a type of electromagnetic mind control that is being broadcast to modify the thinking of Americans and to control slaves. Colorado Springs, Colorado, the Alex system programming and end times military programming is coming out of Colorado Springs and is connected to NORAD. One of the Colorado sites is doing alien programming with mock UFOs. Okay, so this is the last part, which is going to be the alchemical correspondences to Ruby Tuesday. Tuesday is the third, and I put 3 in parenthesis, like I've done in this whole podcast, day of the week. And remember how everything in magic must be encountered 3 times. The High Priestess card is the 3rd card of the tarot, even though it is the 2nd. It is 2 pillars, because the Fool, 0, is the 1st card, and the Magician, 1, is the 2nd. Tuesday corresponds to the planet Mars, which associations include the tarot card, the Tower, deities of war, Pe, working with metal, male sexuality, destructive forces, Aries, Pallas Athena, Freya, Kali, the muscular system, Tutates, so that's what I think where Tuesday's name actually kind of came from, Tiwaz, the Will, Furies, Chimeras, Wormwood, Ruby, Nettle, Scarlet, Tuesday, Horse, Wolf. That was the name of Tuesday's dog. Mars works against Venus and the Moon. Mars has two qualities, the fire Aries quality and the water Scorpio quality. Fire Aries is associated with the Emperor in the tarot, Shiva, Ruby, Isis, Thistle, Tiger Lily, which remind me of Sex Kitten, Glowing Red, Tuesday, Ram, Owl, Power of consecrating things, Weapons equals horns, Energy, burning drives as above. The water Scorpio aspect of Mars is associated with the tarot card Death, Typhon, which is discussed earlier in Mind Control Programming, Nun, Kundalini, Ruby, Bloodstone, Topaz, Snakestone, Dark Red, Brown, Black, Tuesday, plants with strong yet hidden qualities, plants with thorns, plants with medicinal qualities, Samael, Scorpion, Beetle, Wolf, Necromancy, and Weapon is a pain of obligation. The High Priestess card in the tarot personifies Persephone, Artemis, and Isis. It exemplifies Jachin and Boaz, the two pillars of duality, male, female, day, night, good, evil. She is the mediator between the depths and the third pillar in between. She bears the crown of Isis, the solar cross, and the lunar crescent. Pomegranates adorn this card, representing the ruby red will and ambition, belief, desire, life, death, birth, life, fertility, marriage, abundance, prosperity. According to the Anthro and Archaeological Imaginations House Past, Present, and Future, Tuesday is the day of the creation of Earth. The Holy Hag, or Hag archetype, is the evil spirit holy saint. It's an evil female spirit in the ancient Roman culture. Saint Tuesday is a like date of the crows, dead, devil, the thunderbolt, but she is holy too, the mother and the whore. In the archetypal space she lives near Saint Saturday across the river. She is the lady of the dark empire of the worst spirits, the ghosts who leave the tombs and become wolves of the wicked fairies. The hag not only relates to Lilith of the Torah and Old Testament, but also is akin to the fairies. They shapeshift and they are malevolent, but could also be malevolent. Mercurial, just like Tuesday's moods. The word is derived from hag des form, Old English meaning witch, Dutch meaning hex, and German hexe. She is often like the succubus figure, as a nightmare spirit sitting on the sleeper's chest, inducing shortness of breath and sleep paralysis. Mara, that's where nightmare comes from. The term hag-ridden comes to mind. Okay, last tidbits. I'm almost done, guys. I'm so exhausted. Okay. Tuesday Weld ties not only to Kenneth Anger, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, but also to the occult Wizard of Oz and the Kennedy assassination. Kenneth Anger was Tuesday Weld's friend and confidant. The soundtrack to Kenneth Anger's film, Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome by the Electric Light Orchestra, shows Judy Garland's ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz. It's the scene where the Wicked Witch tries to grab her shoes and lightning bolts come out. Lightning bolts are SS-77. Tuesday was in an episode of the Sunset Strip 77 called Secret Island. 77 equals Oz is the magician's number. Book 77, Liber Oz, Crowley. Jack Ruby, Lee Harvey Oswald, Oz Weld, like Tuesday Weld. Welt is world in German. And then 1, 2, and 7 is, like I said, the 1 and the 1 is the 2, and then the 7 is the new aeon or whatever. Horus, the sigil, Crowley's Liber Oz. So in the memoirs of Billy Shears, Tuesday Bloody Tuesday was when John Lennon found out that that Paul McCartney was sacrificed and that William Shepard was going to take his place. And an anagram for Tuesday Bloody Tuesday is Bury a Stud Ye. Thought that was kind of crazy. There's a lot of Alice in Wonderland programming in the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Getting Better, I Am the Walrus, and in I Am the Walrus, he says pornographic priestess, so I think that's actually a reference to Tuesday Weld. And Billy says she came in through the bathroom window, Tuesday's on the phone to me. Kind of saying that Tuesday's kind of at a similar level that I am, and she's kind of giving me guidance or maybe direction even. Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, The May Queen is about Tuesday, and it reminds me of Midsummer, the film. Predictive programming. Weld starred in an episode of Route 66 called Love as a Skinny Kid, filmed in Dallas in August 1962, so about a year before the Kennedy assassination, because I believe that was 63. This episode showed analogies to the deaths of JFK and Marilyn Monroe. Again, we've talked about Marilyn Monroe. And then this is an account from a website. I take it for what it's worth, but my friend's dad met Roman Polanski, Jack Nicholson, Candice Bergen, who was Murphy Brown, Terry Melcher, who's like super creepo, and Tuesday Weld in St. Moritz, Switzerland in the 1970s when he was 20. He spent 3 days at Polanski's house, but remembers only the first evening. He woke up with cuts and bruises in the hospital on the fourth day, unable to speak. Soon he suffered a nervous breakdown and spent 6 months in a mental institution. His father sued Polanski, but it was all hushed after a year. Dun dun dun. So that's it, guys. That's all of it is. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I was like certain this is going to be 3 hours. I was like, this is so much information, but I did get it done within 2.5 hours. Well, I don't think it will be 2.5 hours with all the clips that I'm going to show, and the music, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was just a lot of info, but a lot having to do with stuff that you probably never heard of and just weird shit. So I'm done. I'm gonna do a cartoon next time. This was dark enough, but I hope you guys enjoyed it all the same. So I hope you learned something, because gotta keep learning, gotta keep striving and moving forward through life, no matter what happens to us. So, alright guys, much love. Thank you so much, and, like I said, Tuesday, she definitely was meant for this podcast, because I wanted to find a hidden figure. Not somebody that everybody talks about, or the Titanic, or something mainstream, but something that has been purposefully hidden from most people. And then a lot of other stuff to correspond to that. So, thank you guys. I love you all. And, like I said, thank you for all the praise and kindness and affection that you've bestowed upon me through the course of my life. It is all appreciated.